So now we're going to go in depth into semantic HTML. And this is territory we have already visited. We cruised past this kind of quickly. So it's going to be easy to dismiss this and say I already saw that. But then in the next video, the rooster is going to come home to roost. I don't know if that's a phrase or if I just made that up. But in the next video, you're going to have to use all this stuff. And so go ahead, skip this one if you want. And in the next video, if you need help, come back to it. So here's semantic HTML examples. And so these are different elements tags, tomatoes, tomatoes, use whichever one you want. These are different tags that we could use to structure content on our document. HTML is about structuring content. So we could have a header area, and then we could have a section with an article in it. And in a moment, I'm going to show you how to differentiate section and article and how they're related. We could have an aside, something over on the side. We could have a footer. And then just other examples. And here are the sources where I got these. Like, this is actually a really great resource, the Learn Shay How. Like, that's super great it's like the best book on the market. It's a book and it's also a website. So that dude's awesome. I love Shay How. Like, he and I communicate and talk websites back and forth to each other. Here's the header, a nav for navigation area, a section, an article, and a side, footer. This is from W3 Schools. So here's very similar, header, nav, but then we have a section with two articles in it, and a side and a footer. It's from this person. It's an article on, structuring content. And then here's a header, a nav with a header, interesting, an article with a header, and a footer and two sections, and a side with three sections, a footer. So you're starting to see how we use these different tags, okay? And it just could start to actually look a little bit arbitrary and like really what's going where. So that's one of the goals of what we're learning in this series of videos about structuring a document is how do we use these different tags. And it actually takes a little while to sort of like understand like where header could be used and where footer can be used. And what's the difference between an article and a section? So let's talk about article and section here for a second, and then we're going to hit article and section again. But here's the first thing you need to know about article and section. So I'm going to try to look at you and not look at my notes. You ready? So just think about a newspaper, right? Like a newspaper has different sections. So tell me, what are some of the sections in a newspaper? Like pause the video and tell me, right? What are some of the sections? Right. Awesome. Good job. You totally did it. There's like the world section. There's like the local section. There's like the weekend section. So there's a section. And in the world section, right, are there different articles? Yeah. Here's an article about, like running with the bulls in Spain. You guys are getting a little insight into my head. And here's another article, like Hemingway. I read Hemingway when I was young. I guess that's what that tells you. Here's another article in the world section. So the world section of the newspaper. One on Spain. Here's one on Italy. Here's one on Africa. Big article on Africa. And inside that big article on Africa, there's different sections of that article. So that article has a section, general overview of the region, economic ramifications of new presidency. That's another section. Rebels still, I don't know, angry. That's another section. And so we could have a section, which is like the world section or the weekend section. And that section can have articles. And then inside the articles, there could be different sections inside the articles. So just think about the newspaper. When it comes to figuring out, should I be using an article or should I be using a section? Think about the newspaper. And that could help you figure that out. There's one takeaway that you should know, and that articles must always be able to stand on their own. So articles need to stand on their own. That means I could pull the article out. So here's my newspaper. I have the world section. And get my scissors. I could cut out that article about Africa. I could tape it to my door at work for students to look at. And that article is going to stand on its own. People could stop and read it, and it's like a complete deal. Right? It's not missing something. However, if I took a section out of that article, economic ramifications of new fiscal policy, and just put up that little section on my door, people would be like, what's the rest of the story? Right? So that section does not stand on its own. So articles need to stand on their own. All right, and so that's basically, what this says right here. See, articles have to stand on their own. So that's that right there. All right, so that's a little bit of a preview of using, these different tags to mark up a document. In the next video, I'm going to introduce some hands-on exercises, and you're going to use these tags to start marking up HTML documents. And then in the video after that, I'll give you my solutions.